Well, hello, folks. This is Toby's How's the Market seminar, and thanks very much for everyone for joining. I'm here with my great friend, also called Toby, and he is a great man, 6'6", strapping, rowing, and all things good in life. And he's done all the technical situations in here, and I'll do all the sort of dramatic jabbering as usual. And I hope, unlike usual, some of this will actually be quite interesting, maybe even fascinating, rather than just verbose and theatrical. So I often do a little sort of podcast or a little update on social media about how the market is, just in the moment. But I thought as it was a new year, we do a proper sort of little presentation, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. But at the end of it, if you've got any questions, please do ask. We're also going to send this out on email tomorrow, so you get a copy of it, the slides, and all of my jabbering as well. I think tomorrow you can probably just read the slides and not have to look at my face again. So, I mean, one of the big things that we all are, I suppose, exasperated with in the industry, as lots of industries are, is what the papers say and what the reality is, and last year was no different. The mortgage interest rates did go up by a large amount all of a sudden, but the papers obviously immediately predicted doom and gloom to sell all their papers. Well, back in 2008, of course, there was a very big disaster in the financial markets, the subprime crisis, and they predicted doom and gloom then. And yes, it was a pretty tense 18 months at that point. I was working there at the time, and we went from a real boom in 2007 to 2008-9 that we almost closed our sales department, actually. And it was pretty boring for me, actually, but it did work out. And really what I'm the highlight, or I suppose the theme of what I'm going to be going through today is that if you look at the property market in any sort of medium term, it's a good thing. It does go up. We are going to go through sort of highs and lows, but actually the curve always goes up. So we've got a few links there you can click through when you're at home, but I think they're quite fun and not to be really looked at too seriously. I'm going to be talking about interest rates, of course, because it is a headline of our moment. They did go up dramatically, but we've got some great friends at Capricorn Financial. They're a fantastic agency that I've used personally over many years. I think I bought something like 7 or 8 properties via Ross at Capricorn. He's been really a gentleman, lives just up the road and works just up the road. So I'd be delighted to help you and guide you through what is a bit of a tumultuous situation at the moment, but as we'll go into a second, there's lots of things to look forward to in the mortgage market, and not all doom and gloom. I'm going to talk about the rental market booming at the moment. We've been having a fantastic time of late. Samantha, Nicole, and our whole team at TLC have been renting things for record prices recently, and what impact that might have with the buy-to-let landlord coming back into the market, and maybe that being a reason for the prices of capital prices to go up. We're going to have a brief look at the top sales and top lets of 2022, a bit of a fun snapshot of some really high figures, to give you a little bit of an encouraging glance of what things can achieve, and also just a little nod to the past and see how that actually predicts the future in many ways. As we'll start in a second on our slide next. This is being produced by a company called Lonres, London Residential. A guy called Anthony there and his team are absolutely fantastic. They operate a sort of commission-sharing website and an archive database that we think is absolutely fabulous. Any surveyor or valuer uses this as their gold dust, their gold mine for any information. No other portal you can get for price comparison that is worth anything compared to this. So if you ever want any sort of information about what has sold on your street or what your price of your own property should be, then give us a call, because we can give you the true stats of the street, of what the history it is. It gives you all of the lease information, all of the floor plans. It's truly helpful, and I take my hat off to the guys at Lonres. They're fantastic. I got them I commissioned them to do a 10-year review of the market in Kensington and Chelsea. I'm often asked, on the street, as you can imagine, how's the market? And often my answer was just a sort of banal, yes, it's okay. It's not too bad. It's not brilliant. Sometimes, like in 2014, yes, it was really brilliant. It was really booming. It was great to be in. But most markets, it's fine, but not as bad as the papers say. That's a classic sort of line of mine. But I sort of caught myself one day and thought, well, is it? Or is it better, or is it worse? I'd actually really like to know the truth, and the only truth you can find is in the stats, is in the evidence. So I've gone to review 2011 to 22, SW3, 5, 7, 10, and W8. So the main Kensington Chelsea postcodes. And interesting, on SW5, which was one of our main zones, Earl's Court, if you'd asked me on the street how much prices have gone up, I would have said, well, maybe 2-3%, maybe nothing. I wouldn't have said they've gone down, but not up too much. Well, I was wrong. Last year they went up 18%. In the last 10 years they went up by 22%. It's absolutely crazy. If you look at 2014, which I thought was the best year of all time, and literally until the other day I said to someone, well, we haven't quite reached the heights of 2014. Well, look at the average prices. It went from 1.62 up to 1.84 in those 2 years, which is just madness really to me, but that's the truth. If you look at the graphs, which is the general thing, any markets to move, why would you invest in property in this area? Well, that's the reason. And if you can tell me any other investment that you can make in stocks and shares in the world that makes this consistent gain, and this 10-year stat was the same 10 years before, then tell me about it. Unless you're severely intelligent, you pick and choose exactly the right markets, and you're a stock trading genius, property is a standard classic way to make some money. And that goes across the board. If you look at 10-year stats, in SW10, they're up 43%. That's an incredible rise. You think about the whole of SW10, all the top floor walk-ups, the basement flats, the flats on Busy Road, they're all included in this. This isn't just the best of the best. A 43% rise in that period of time. There are some slopes, as you can see. W8 has had a bit of a bad time last year. But on average, if you look at the 10-year average just here, 22.6% it's gone up in the last 10 years in the whole of Kensington and Chelsea. And so, I suppose, I could end the seminar there, but I'm going to go on to a few other fun things. But, that is the main fact that, yes, in any moment, there's going to be some ups and downs, some bad news stories. But actually, if you can wave the storm, then, that's what you get out at the end of it. Just to have a little bit more of a, I suppose, a sober look at what's been happening over those last 10 years. They sent me actually a 9-page document with all facts and figures and stats over that period of time, and I'd be delighted to share it with you. If you email me, then I'll send you the link. But the sales volumes, which is quite another stark figure, has gone down dramatically over the last 10 years. If you look at SW5 again, over the last 10 years, in 2011, we had 243 sales that went through that year. In 2018, there were only 95. We're back up to 135 now, but that's still a decrease in nearly 40%. That's not good. Certainly not good for estate agents as well, who just want to sell houses, and lots of them. But across the board, if you look at the whole of Kensington and Chelsea, it's a dramatic decrease of 25%. Why? Well, I think the main reason is not sort of Brexit or COVIDs or wars, and not to be flippant at all about all of those things, or even interest rates recently. It's the buy-to-let landlord hasn't been investing too much anymore. The government introduced the 3% surcharge in stamp duty, which is really ridiculous to a lot of landlords that aren't landlord moguls who own sort of hundreds of properties. Someone who owns one property elsewhere in the world is still going to get taxed that extra 3%. They're also being charged, not able to offset any taxes in the middle of the process. No mortgage rates are being able to take off their income, and they get paid. They have to pay 28% capital gains tax at the end. So a lot of tax involved for landlords, making the whole investment not appetizing at all, despite dramatic capital gains. But I think as far as bad news goes, that's about it for the presentation. I want to go on now to mortgage rates. A lot of this has come from our friends at Capricorn Financial. And as I said, I'd love to introduce you to Ross and Tony and his team. In the slide presentation are his details. A lot has obviously been talked about the massive increase that went up last year. And it's not funny. We all got very used to, got very settled into the fact that we were paying 0.5 or 0.1, base rates, and then we're, my mortgage is 2%. It's fantastic. But actually, 3.5%, although it is a dramatic increase, isn't actually the worst it's ever been. I'm sure lots of you watching now will remember, but in 1989, did you know that interest rates were nearly 15%? And then what interest rates were above base rate, is probably 18, 19%. My uncle, who was in the business then, and owned a lot of property, and had to give them all back to the bank, after that, because it was just so high. So in relative terms, 3.5%, although it is a real pinch, it shouldn't be the end of, property investment. And as the next slide will go on to say, Capricorn have given some very good things to look forward to. So the mortgage market is already sorting itself out with this raise in rates. Tracker mortgages are only 0.3, 0.4% above base rates. Fixed rates are reduced from 7% at the end of Liz Truss's era to around 4.5%. A number of lenders have introduced positive criteria changes to help maximise borrowing capability. Halifax have had an income multiple of 4.5%. If an applicant was using income from self-employment, they've now scrapped that, so that self-employment borrowers are now able to access up to 5.5% annual income. Clydesdale have done the same. Capricorn have also told me that lender turnaround times, which was really boring from us trying to chase sales through at the end of last year, which was taking 8, 9, 10 weeks, some of them, just to get a valuation in, have now cleared their backlogs. And apparently HSB and Halifax have now a 1-day working turnaround to book a valuation, which is music to my ears. I just had one before I started this valuation from eServe. So they predict as well some of the more aggressive lenders will be reducing their rates to between 3.3 and 3.7% before the end of Q2 this year. So again, a lot more positive than the basic headlines we've been reading, certainly a lot more positive than 4 or 5 months ago when we had this great big turnover of government, which didn't go so well. So, it really comes to this, and this is the reason, I suppose, that, again, not to sound flippant at all, but, why not have a mortgage? What's the alternative? Well, the alternative for a lot of people, obviously, is to rent. And what's happened in the rental market, which is great for landlords, but not great if you're choosing between buying and renting, is that prices are up by 19% on average in SW5 over the last quarter. So actually, are you going to go out and pay 20% more rent, or are you going to pay 3 or 4% more on your mortgage? And if you're paying an interest-only mortgage, it's a really achievable amount to pay off a month. Whereas, to pay this exorbitant rent, actually, for at least a year, 18 months, before the market gets better, before mortgage interests get better, is a tricky one to judge. As our graphs show, the capital gain on these properties over the length of time, of 7 to 10 years, certainly outweighs the short-term pinch of paying a higher mortgage interest rate. And so I very much encourage you, as a potential buyer who's thinking about buying at the moment and then thinking maybe to go back renting, well, why waste the money still on renting? Why waste a lot more than you were, 20% more than you were only a few seconds ago? And that brings me neatly on to a little bit of a review of our rental market. I'm very proud of our lettings team, and they've achieved some absolutely incredible figures this year. And I thought it was just a good opportunity to show you or highlight a few of them, and to sort of educate you, I guess, about what's been happening in the rental market, which has really seen the biggest change I've seen in my career so far, and I'm sure a lot of you have. Empress Gate is a flat that we sold, we rented. Always thinking about selling, aren't I? The rent it was renting at was 2,200. It's gone up to 3,200, a 46% difference. A small flat, 81 Warwick Road, which is just a studio. Nothing's changed, by the way, in the course of these different rents. It's gone up from 1,170 up to £1,500 a month. You know, that's a 30% difference. You know, this is a small studio flat that is renting now for what a 1-bedroom should rent out, and it's just a studio. If you look at actually the right-hand column as well, on the yields, that's the most interesting thing for me as well. And I think a big reason why buy-to-let landlords might come back into the market despite the taxes is that, well, I mean, when I first started this, you know, 17, 18 years ago, it used to be that you could buy a property for 500,000, it would rent for £500 a week, and that would be about a 5% yield. That was what we all sort of thought that we could do. And we're getting back to that stage now. You know, some of these are renting for 6.8% yields, or you know, at least 3.5% yields, 5.34% yield, 4.99% yield. So, you know, it's a great time to rent at the moment, but it's a great time to you know, maybe have a look at becoming a rental landlord again. You know, especially if we can get rid of some of these taxes and get richer on that case. And actually, on that basis, if you look at the next slide, we're a big supporter in this new petition talking about the taxes that government introduced a few years ago. Well, the government responded to this petition, asking them to reinstate the ability for landlords to set the full amount of mortgage interest against their rental income before tax is calculated. You know, that was a big one, and that is a big reason why landlords haven't invested in property for the last few years. Currently, they've only got 30,000 signatures, you know, but with your help, you know, and with your friends' help, sign that petition, click on the link, and you can make that happen, because that would make an enormous impact on the rental income, rental market. But no, as the phrase said, you know, I think it's time for you landlords to have a look at the market again. Yes, you know, that there are some upfront taxes, but actually the yields may well offset them now. And we're delighted to give you a yield analysis on any property that you look at with us. Next couple of slides, a bit of a fun one, really, but also just to sort of hammer the point home that over the last 15 years, you know, what prices have done. 2007 was a big one for me. I was a young sort of buck in the sales negotiator market. I was employed by my uncle here, and he gave me the option of either having a commission salary and a salary. I think it was 10% plus I don't know, £15,000 a year salary or something like that. Or he said to me, well, would you like a 30% only commission? And I said, well, you know, Uncle Simon, I wouldn't take money from you if I wasn't earning it for you. You know, I just didn't feel right about that. And I also was quite ambitious and competitive. So I said, I'll take the 30%. And that was in 2007. It was a great year. You know, maybe I was very lucky, obviously, in the fact that it was a boom year as well. But in that year, we didn't think the prices were going to get any better. You know, a 16.55 per square foot for a Bolton Gardens floor, first floor flat. The one that I'm most proud of, which was my sale, was 4 at 30 Collingham Place, which I'll go on to a bit later. But, you know, I felt pretty guilty about that sale to the buyer because I didn't think it could be achieved again, that price. And lots of people thought the same. But if you flip to the next slide, which is just last year, 15 years on, and you can see those pounds per square foot prices. If you think 16.55 was the top one last time, well, we're up to nearly 2,200 per square foot this time. You know, even the lowest one is nearly £1,800 per square foot. We sold a Coleham Court flat for over 2,000 per square foot flat, which needed quite a bit of work. So, you know, even during that time, you know, with not doing work to a property, you still staggering gain, which does, you know, I think, you know, offset the short-term uncertainty of the market. You know, interest rates rises, and certainly, you know, says to a lot of stocks and share investment that this is the way to go. When's the right time to buy? I get asked all the time. There's a little lady who walked into my office about 15 years ago, and she asked me, well, Toby, I really want to buy a studio, and I've got about 250,000, maybe 300,000 pounds to spend. And I said, well, that's great. And I took her to see a few properties, and I thought they were rather nice. And I gave her the yields and that sort of thing. And she said, oh, well, I need to think about it, but maybe it's not the right time. I think the market's going to get worse, she said. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. Absolutely, you know, give me a call. About 5 years later, she came back and said, oh, well, I'm really up for buying that studio now. I've got about 250 to 300,000 pounds to spend. I said, right, unfortunately, the market's gone up. It's gone up, has she? And I said, well, yes, it has. It hasn't gone down, unfortunately. But I can show you a few things that are a bit higher priced. But she said, okay, we'll go and do that. And I showed her a few things. She said, oh, no, they're too expensive. The market will come down, she said. And you know what's coming next? About 5 years later, she did the same. And of course, that studio flat that was 250,000 was now worth 550,000, 600,000. So, unfortunately for that lady, as for a lot of the ladies, that was the right time to buy, as is now the right time to buy. The only wrong time to buy, is all the time. I don't think we can wait for better markets. Of course, you get a boom in the market in 2007, 14, and if you sort of talk to some of the property gurus, they say these 7-year cycles are definitely the way things go. And if you looked at our former graphs again, actually, it does seem to correlate that 2007, 2014, 2022. I think probably without COVID coming in the way, we would have had one. That certainly has seen a boom, in our microcosm that we work and live in. So just do it, as the people from Nike will say. So why invest in this boom market, you say, Toby? This is 2022, and we're in 2023 now. If it's so good, then there's no opportunity. Well, of course, people do believe the papers and, the uncertainty in the market. And to be fair, there is uncertainty, and there will be some people put off by that. And where there is uncertainty, there is opportunity. And, some of these stats, they're the lowest sales that happened in our area last year. And some people will make a lot of money out of these properties. For whatever reason, there will be distressed sales and divorces and deaths and various other reasons why people have to move immediately because they're moving abroad and they'll need to have a fire sale. Some landlords, the interest rates of course have gone up and it's had a massive impact on them. But so always. Give us a call. We're happy to find you, some good deals. We've got good contacts with builders and plumbers and architects and all sorts of people like that, and contacts at the council. So it just does prove a point that even though there were 2,000 per square foot achieved last year, there are also a 700 per square foot. So keep an eye out, and often some of these are off market that you won't see online as well. We always keep a large stock on our list. And we have about 40 to 50 properties live for sale, for example, but we've got about 80 or 90 always that are off market. So it's always worth keeping in touch. Just a couple of final fun ones for you. This is actually 2 floor plans of 103 Colham Court that I mentioned earlier. Just to hammer the point home that a property investment is a good one. Well, in 1998, this flat, which had a few configuration changes, but nothing major and really not much cosmetically, sold for 650, and last year we sold it for 3,650,000. So it went up in 20 years, 24 years by £3 million. Good decision to buy that flat. And interestingly, I actually looked at the stats. That was one of the highest sales in 1998. So even at that time, that was a high price. It was one of the highest prices in Colham Court. And maybe they thought at the time, oh, we spent too much. Well, they didn't, did they? The next one is a beautiful house in Hesper Mews. Again, the stats speak for themselves. It was bought in 1997, when the interest rates were very, very high still, at 700,000. That would have been a lot of money for that house back then. That they did some work, but not too much reconfiguration. Actually, you can see the 2 pictures there. Apart from some lovely wooden floors there, not much was done to the house in terms of sort of major works. Well, they got £2 million back on their investment just by waiting 20 years. And then my friend Toby over here, who's not just a technical magician with all these wonderful slides here, but also a talented salesman, achieved the record pounds per square foot ever at TLC actually at the time. This was a flat which is, just in a shorter time period, was sold in 2010 for 1.5, and only 10 years later, without doing anything to it at all, 10 years later, it sold for 1.825. So £320,000 in 10 years. Not bad. And then the final one was one I mentioned earlier, nice gentleman from Thailand came into the office. He wanted to buy a flat for his daughter. We'd just been put in charge of a beautiful new development of 9 flats that have been transformed from a South African overseas hostel. And the first flat, 4th floor flat, was the show flat. And he wanted a flat that was brand new, that his daughter could move into with the furniture. And he paid top dollar for it. He paid the record pounds per square foot of history at the time, 920,000, nearly 1,300 per square foot. And I did feel jolly guilty at the time. I thought, well, this guy's paying too much. You know, I feel quite immoral about this. You know, I'm not sure this is the right job for me. I felt bad. But lo and behold, 7 years later, without touching it at all, he made £317,000 on that investment. Just because he made that investment. You know, it was a boom time, 2007, but boom times come again. And particularly for, you know, first floor flats or flats without too much compromise, high ceilings, what have you, in a beautiful run building. You know, it was a wise investment in the end. You know, I didn't see it personally at the time, but cool, boy did he in 7 years' time. So I know we're online. If anyone is still there or wants to have a question, then do give us a call, send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you in the office to have a chat and a coffee about it. Toby, myself, and my colleagues here at TLC, we deal with sales, block management, and lettings, and we're all sort of, I think, well furnished to tell you about how each of our respective markets are going. We're here to help and look forward to having a wonderful 2023 with you.